like at Corinth, where he spent a year and a half, or Ephesus. He's there for a short time, and he has to leave because of persecution, and they're suffering persecution, and they're holding up. But despite the fact that he's with them for such a short amount of time, he's taught them, and they have learned a lot of material, a lot of doctrine. And some of the specific questions they ask or want clarification on sheds light on what were some of the things that Paul taught young Christians. He taught them many things as we've been looking at the second coming of Christ. And when we read these letters, and it talks a lot about the second coming, do we understand them? Do we teach young Christians in the faith these doctrines, these precepts that are being talked about? And when it gets to this chapter 2 of Thessalonians, for some, including myself, this is kind of challenging. What does this mean? This man of lawlessness, the apostasy, and how does that relate to the second coming? And there are a lot of different interpretations, and I hope that when we talk about these things, I remain humble, because I don't know that I have it right. It's intentionally vague in times and challenging, but by and large, it's meant to bring comfort. And when he wrote these things to the Thessalonians, I think we need to understand it from their mindset, that they would understand what Paul was getting at. They would understand what he was saying. So therefore, we should be able to understand, for the most part, everything that he's talking about. Some people, present day, will look at the passages that we're going to look at as none of these things have been fulfilled. Some will look at these passages, everything's been fulfilled. Or maybe there's a little mixture of both, and I would put myself in that category, and we'll be looking at it as such. So let's go ahead and read chapter 2 and dig in. I don't necessarily have a specific or rigid thought process. I have things to discuss, other passages to go to, and I hope that overall the class will be beneficial. So 2 Thessalonians chapter 2. Now we request you, brethren, with regard to the coming of our Lord Jesus Christ and our gathering together to him, that you not be quickly shaken from your composure, or be disturbed either by a spirit or a message or a letter as if from us, to the effect that the day of the Lord has come. Let no one in any way deceive you, for it will not come unless the apostasy comes first, and the man of lawlessness is revealed, the son of destruction, who opposes and exalts himself above every so-called God or object of worship, so that he takes his seat in the temple of God, displaying himself as being God. Do you not remember that while I was still with you, I was telling you these things? And you know what restrains him now, so that in his time he will be revealed. For the mystery of lawlessness is already at work. Only he who now restrains will do so until he is taken out of the way. Then that lawless one will be revealed, from whom the Lord will slay with the breath of his mouth, and bring to an end by the appearance of his coming. That is, the one whose coming is in accord with the activity of Satan, with all power and signs and false wonders, and with all the deception of wickedness for those who perish, because they did not receive the love of the truth so as to be saved. For this reason, God will send upon them a deluding influence, so that they will believe what is false, in order that all may be judged who did not believe the truth, but took pleasure in wickedness. But we should always give thanks to God for you, brethren, beloved of the Lord, because God has chosen you from the beginning for salvation, through sanctification by the Spirit and faith in the truth. It was for this he called you through our gospel, that you may gain the glory of our Lord Jesus Christ. So then, brethren, stand firm and hold to the traditions which you were taught, whether by word of mouth or by letter from us. Now may our Lord Jesus Christ himself and God our Father, who has loved us and given us eternal comfort and good hope by grace, comfort and strengthen your hearts in every good work and word. I think it's also interesting, we've seen it in the first letter, chapter 4 and 5. He ends this section talking about the second coming with comfort, because this doesn't apply to you, these judgments, these things. You're set apart for salvation. This should bring about comfort. But let's back to the beginning of chapter 2. It says, and we discussed this briefly on Wednesday, the first few verses. Now we request you, brethren, with regard to the coming of our Lord Jesus Christ and our gathering together to him. This is, again, referring to the second coming when Jesus comes with his angels, the trumpet, the shout. He's collecting his saints. They're being gathered together. He says in verse 2, that you not be quickly shaken from your composure, or be disturbed, either by a spirit or a message or a letter as if from us, to the effect that the day of the Lord has come. Somehow, we don't know what the source of information is, whether this was a rumor, a misunderstanding among brethren, or an outright falsification, a false prophet or false message saying, the day of the Lord's come, or it's coming about. It's like any day. It could be tomorrow. It's occurring right now. And it appears as though that source is attributed back to Paul. Do you see that? It's as if a letter or a message from us. And Paul saying, I did not say this. Let's not be shaken. Let's not misunderstand things. And we talked about how at the end of the letter, he gives his signature. I, Paul, 3:17 says, I, Paul, write this greeting with my own hand, and this is the distinguishing mark in my letter. This is the way I write. Almost as if to say, this one's authentic. Look, here's my signature, or this is the way I write. This is authoritative. I'm not sure what you've heard or where you heard it, that the day of the Lord has come. Make no mistake, it has not, because, back in chapter 2, he says, because, let no one, verse 3, in any way deceive you, for it will not come unless the apostasy comes first, and the man of lawlessness is revealed, the son of destruction. He's saying, we know, you guys know, it can't be the time yet, because the apostasy hasn't happened and this man of lawlessness. So we know it couldn't possibly be this. Well, now we might be wondering, okay, what is he talking about? Apostasy, man of lawlessness? Well, let's try to dig in and understand these things, John.
I get the impression that Paul had taught what these things, who these people were, while he was there with them. I think I get the impression that they knew what Paul was talking about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I'm trying to find.
I don't know, but I think they did.
Yeah, verse 5, to what you're saying. Do you not remember that while I was still with you, I was telling you these things? So he had communicated, well, when was the last time he was with them? It was that first trip of his second missionary journey, or his first time with the Thessalonians. Remember, I was telling you these things, indicating it wasn't once or maybe twice, multiple times. I was telling you these things, remember? And that happens a lot in the first letter, as you know. I have no need to write to you about these things. You guys got this. But he reminds them anyway, as he does here. He's saying, you've heard this rumor that I said the day of the Lord's now, or it's coming. I didn't say that, and you guys know, I told you already, it's not going to happen because, look, this hasn't been completed yet. This. Let's discuss this. First of all, we need to define some terms because, at least for me, it's not in my common vocabulary to use the word apostasy. What is that? What is apostasy? A falling away. Yeah. It's, and by implication, a falling away from the faith, falling away from Christ. There was going to be some sort of great apostasy. Other translations, does anybody see a different word in there? Rebellion or revolt. It's this idea of a turning away from loyalty to someone. So there's this idea of rejection, and it would be of Christ. And then there's this man of lawlessness. Is this the first time we've ever read anything like this? And that's a loaded question. Is this Paul, he's laying out some new doctrine that has been talked about or alluded to or prophesied before? You're on it, Daniel 7. So I guess I did ask some people to read before today, and if you did, fantastic, and I hope you don't mind. We're going to go back there and reread a lot of those again, because some of those texts are difficult. Daniel 7 and Matthew 24. We'll go first to see what Jesus has to say on the topic, and we'll see, oh, I think this lines up. I think this is what Paul's talking about, what Jesus was talking about. Well, what's Jesus talking about? Well, he's actually alluding back to what Daniel was talking about. And then hopefully, as we kind of look and compare these passages, some things will start to make sense, especially as we look from this vantage point, the year 2023, back on the history of things that have happened thus far. At least from what I've seen and understood, I hope it'll be helpful for us as well. Any other comments before we go to Matthew 24? All right, let's head to Matthew 24. And we've talked a little bit about this chapter. Jesus is leaving the temple area, and he's had a few things to say to the Pharisees and the religious leaders in chapter 23, the 8 woes to you, scribes, Pharisees, hypocrites. And he's leaving that area, and he talks about a coming destruction of Jerusalem and of the temple. And he says in verse 2, it said, "Do you not see all these things? Truly I say to you, not one stone here will be left upon another, which will not be torn down." So Jesus is prophesying this place, it's going to be devastated. It's going to be completely destroyed. Historically, we see that it happened in AD 70, the destruction of Jerusalem. But he says it in a time of tranquility and peace. There was not anything, too monumental going on. And so Jesus says that. In verse 35, he says, "Heaven and earth will pass away, but my words will not pass away." So if you want a test of a prophet, if you look back in the Old Testament, a test of a prophet, does the thing come to pass for which the prophet says? Well, here's a big one for Jesus, prophesying of the destruction of Jerusalem. But he says some other things in chapter 24 that applies much beyond the destruction of Jerusalem, at least in my estimation and understanding. But let's read, starting in verse 3 of Matthew 24. "As he was sitting on the Mount of Olives, the disciples came to him privately, saying, 'Tell us, when will these things happen? And what will be the sign of your coming and of the end of the age?' And Jesus answered and said to them, 'See to it that no one misleads you. For many will come in my name, saying, I am the Christ, and will mislead many. You will be hearing of wars and rumors of wars. See that you are not frightened. For those things must take place, but that is not yet the end. For nation will rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom. And in various places there will be famines and earthquakes, but all these things are merely the beginning of birth pangs. Then they will deliver you to tribulation and will kill you, and you will be hated by all nations because of my name. At that time, many will fall away and will betray one another and hate one another. Many false prophets will arise and will mislead many. Because lawlessness is increased, most people's love will grow cold. But the one who endures to the end, he will be saved. This gospel of the kingdom shall be preached in the whole world as a testimony to all the nations, and then the end will come. Therefore, when you see the abomination of desolation, which was spoken of through Daniel the prophet, standing in the holy place, let the reader understand. Then those who are in Judea must flee to the mountains. And we'll stop there. So, this passage, I think, certainly talks about the destruction of Jerusalem and what was going to happen there. And these first parts give a chronology, a timing, or a sequence, I should say. But one thing that we'll see it does not give is duration of times. That's intentionally left out and is intentionally vague. Other than the destruction of Jerusalem, verse 34, I'm skipping ahead. It says, "Truly I say to you, this generation will not pass away until all these things take place. Heaven and earth will pass away, but my words will not pass away." So he's saying, of this coming destruction, this generation, it's going to happen within this generation. They're not going to die before this goes down. And so it did. We see a transition verse in verse 36, though. It says, "But of that day and hour no one knows, not even the angels of heaven, nor the Son of Man, but the Father alone. For the coming of the Son of Man will be just like the days of Noah." And it goes on from there. And we've read that in this class before. So there's this twofold prophecy, the coming destruction of Jerusalem, and it'll have signs to accompany it. What was the sign for them? It wasn't wars and rumors of wars and earthquakes. There was a sign that they knew when that happened, the destruction of Jerusalem's at hand, get out of there. Remember what was the sign? When the city was surrounded, Luke would be very specific about that in his prophecy of this. When Luke 21, when you see the city surrounded by armies, that's your cue. Here it says, verse 15, "When you see the abomination of desolation, which was spoken of through Daniel the prophet, standing in the holy place." That was the cue. That was what you were to know. So Daniel is brought up. Jesus is referencing Daniel. That's your understanding. He's assuming you know what Daniel said. Do we know what Daniel said? And we need to go back there next and try to piece these things together. John.
Well, quick observation, this first part of Matthew where it seems at least clear to me is talking about the destruction of Jerusalem.
Mm-hmm.
He says that when you see this abomination and desolation coming, you're to flee from
Yes.
the area. 2 Thessalonians 2 verse 1 talks about the coming of our Lord and the gathering together
Mm-hmm.
of his people. So I think what's talked about right here is not the same as what he's talking about in 2
Right.
One's a scattering, one's a
Yes.
gathering.
Yeah, that's good. This first judgment of Jerusalem, there would be signs. You could know it's about to happen. And the action is, let the reader understand. Get out of town. Literally. Run. Go to the mountains. Don't go back to get your coat. Don't do anything else. You just leave. Don't worry about anything else. You just book it and get out of there. But that's not at all what we read about when Christ comes back again. It's going to be without warning. It's going to be total. It'll be inescapable. But for those who are righteous, that's a good thing. We're going to be gathered with the Lord. We don't need to run, hide. But this first one about Jerusalem, you need to move. You need to get out of there. So that's a very good distinction. All that I believe Jesus is alluding to is still a lot of what Daniel had talked about. And so if we go back to Daniel, we'll go back to Daniel chapter 7. Daniel 7 and Daniel 2 are parallel prophecies. In Daniel 2, King Nebuchadnezzar has this dream of this big statue, and it has 4 metallic sections, the head of gold, the chest of silver, and then bronze and iron and clay. So you can reference that, but it's parallel to Daniel 7. Daniel 7 is Daniel's dream and his vision at night that he has about 4 beasts. But we'll see, if you look at them, it makes sense that he's talking about the same things. These 4 creatures, or the statue with the 4 parts, is talking about 4 kingdoms that would arise starting from Daniel's time onward. So let's go ahead and read Daniel chapter 7, parts of it, or maybe all of it. In the first year of Belshazzar, king of Babylon, Daniel saw a dream and visions in his mind as he lay on his bed. Then he wrote the dream down and related the following summary of it. I'll just pause. So this is just a summary of his dream. I wish we knew more of it, because it's really interesting. A lot of what he says is kind of like a dream. It's kind of strange and different. But what we see is this is no just dream. This has anchors in reality. So we just have to understand these are a dreamlike vision, but they have some connection with reality. Verse 2, Daniel said, I was looking in my visions by night, and behold, the 4 winds of heaven were stirring up the great sea, and 4 great beasts were coming up from the sea, different from one another. The first was like a lion and had the wings of an eagle. I kept looking until its wings were plucked, and it was lifted up from the ground and made to stand on 2 feet like a man. A human mind also was given to it. And behold, another beast, a second one, resembling a bear. And it was raised up on one side, and 3 ribs were in its mouth between its teeth. And thus they said to it, Arise, devour much meat. After this I kept looking, and behold, another one, like a leopard, which had on its back 4 wings of a bird. The beast also had 4 heads, and dominion was given to it. After this I kept looking in the night visions, and behold, a 4th beast, dreadful and terrifying and extremely strong, and it had large iron teeth. It devoured and crushed and trampled down the remainder with its feet, and it was different from all the beasts that were before it. And it had 10 horns. While I was contemplating the horns, behold, another horn, a little one, came up among them. And 3 of the first horns were pulled out by the roots before it. And behold, this horn possessed eyes like the eyes of a man, and a mouth uttering great boasts. I kept looking until thrones were set up, and the Ancient of Days took his seat. His vesture was like white snow, and the hair of his head like pure wool. His throne was ablaze with flames. Its wheels were burning for a burning fire. A river of fire was flowing and coming out from before him. Thousands upon thousands were attending him, and myriads upon myriads were standing before him. The court sat, and the books were opened. Then I kept looking because of the sound of the boastful words which the horn was speaking. I kept looking until the beast was slain, and its body was destroyed and given to the burning fire. As for the rest of the beasts, their dominion was taken away, but an extension of life was granted to them for an appointed period of time. I kept looking in the night visions, and behold, with the clouds of heaven, one like a son of man was coming, and he came up to the Ancient of Days, and was presented before him. And to him was given dominion, glory, and a kingdom, that all the peoples, nations, and men of every language might serve him. His dominion is an everlasting dominion, which will not pass away, and his kingdom is one which will not be destroyed. As for me, Daniel, my spirit was distressed within me, and the visions in my mind kept alarming me. I approached one of those who were standing by and began asking him the exact meaning of all this. So he told me and made known to me the interpretation of these things. These great beasts, which are 4 in number, are 4 kings which will arise from the earth. But the saints of the highest one will receive the kingdom and possess the kingdom forever, for all ages to come. Then I desired to know the exact meaning of the 4th beast, which was different from all the others, exceedingly dreadful, with its teeth of iron and its claws of bronze, and which devoured, crushed, and trampled down the remainder with its feet, and the meaning of the 10 horns that were in its head, and the other horn which came up, and before which 3 of them fell, namely that horn which had eyes and a mouth uttering great boasts, and which was larger in appearance than its associates. I kept looking, and that horn was waging war with the saints, and overpowering them, until the Ancient of Days came, and judgment was passed in favor of the saints of the highest one, and the time arrived when the saints took possession of the kingdom. Thus he said, the 4th beast will be a 4th kingdom on the earth, which will be different from all the other kingdoms, and will devour the whole earth and tread it down and crush it. As for the 10 horns, out of this kingdom 10 kings will arise, and another will arise after them, and he will be different from the previous ones, and will subdue 3 kings. He will speak out against the Most High and wear down the saints of the highest one, and he will intend to make alterations in times and in law, and they will be given into his hand for a time, times, and half a time. But the court will sit for judgment, and his dominion will be taken away, annihilated, and destroyed forever. Then the sovereignty, the dominion, and the greatness of all the kingdoms under the whole heaven will be given to the people of the saints of the highest one. His kingdom will be an everlasting kingdom, and all the dominions will serve and obey him. At this point, the revelation ended. As for me, Daniel, my thoughts were greatly alarming me, and my face grew pale, but I kept the matter to myself. Okay, thank you for bearing with that longer reading. So this is a prophecy, hundreds of years before Christ came, and he's speaking and prophesying about these 4 empires or kingdoms that were going to take place. From previous studies or history, what are those kingdoms that he describes? You've got a lion, a bear, a leopard, and then this 4th dreadful, terrible beast. So the first one would be what kingdom he is currently in, Babylon. And then after the Babylonians fell, then came the Medes and Persians. And then after them was Greece, the Greeks. And then finally, the next one was Rome. And the Romans were the empire that was in charge when the Messiah came. When Christ came, Rome was in charge. This was that 4th terrible beast that was not like the other kingdoms before it. This one crushed anybody who would go up against them, had pictorially iron teeth and claws of bronze, 10 horns. It's probably extremely terrifying. But then there's this little horn that comes up among them. And how is he described? What were some attributes about him? Boastful. He had a mouth. This horn had a mouth and eyes, and he's arrogant. He's boastful, saying these things. What else? What is he doing? So he rips up 3 of the horns, so he's subduing other kings, and he's also doing some other things. He's opposing the saints. A couple different places. Daniel, he's wanting to know, okay, what does this mean? So he asks somebody, and he gets the short version. Basically, these 4 beasts are 4 kingdoms, but in the end, the saints will get the kingdom. That's it. Oh, okay. Well, tell me more about this 4th one, this really, really dreadful one, and the horn. What's going on with that? In verse 23, the 4th beast will be a 4th kingdom on the earth, which will be different. Verse 24, as for the 10 horns, out of this one kingdom 10 will arise, and another will arise after them, and he will be different from the previous ones and subdue 3 kings. He will speak out against the Most High and will wear down the saints of the highest one. So that's where we were talking, John. But even before that, there was another. Oh, there it is, back in verse 21. I kept looking, and that horn was waging war with the saints and overpowering them. He was, quote unquote, winning. He was overpowering them. He was killing them, and they were becoming martyrs. This was a time of extreme persecution that was going on. So if we look now back at 2 Thessalonians 2, let's try to put some of these things in context, if we can. And again, this is my understanding, looking at different resources and different individuals' material. In the 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, he said, the coming of the Lord can't have happened yet because this hasn't happened yet. Verse 3, let no one in any way deceive you, for it will not come unless the apostasy comes first, and the man of lawlessness is revealed, the son of destruction, who opposes and exalts himself above every so-called God or object of worship, so that he takes his seat in the temple of God, displaying himself as being God. Do you not remember that while I was still with you, I was telling you all these things? So this event, this sequence of things, seems to mirror what Jesus was saying in Matthew 24 and what Daniel was prophesying in Daniel 7. Chapter 2, chapter 7, chapter 8, and Daniel. There's some more things we can glean from there. But there's a sequence. This happens. These 4 beasts, these 4 kingdoms would happen. There would be this horn on the 4th beast that would utter great boasts. It would be arrogant. It would exalt itself. It would wage war on the saints and overpower them. This sounds a whole lot like what happened in Rome, starting with the Emperor Nero. And you see not just Nero, but a succession of emperors in Rome that heavily persecuted Christianity. Up until this point, we see Christianity is more or less tolerated. There is persecution, mostly from the non-believing Jews. They're stirring up some of the Roman officials and government to persecute Christians. But by and large, they're kind of left alone until around AD 64, Nero, it's assumed he started a fire in Rome, but he blamed the Christians for it, and thus started a chain of events of persecution against Christianity that would ebb and flow. It would increase and decrease through successive emperors until the time of Constantine. Perhaps, I believe that's what's going on here. Paul, he says a little bit further in verse 6, and you know what restrains him now, so that in his time he will be revealed. For the mystery of lawlessness is already at work. Only he who now restrains will do so until he is taken out of the way. apparently he's already explained to them many times, you know what restrains him now, or what restrains him now, but that's not happened yet. So once that restraint is removed, this man of lawlessness will be revealed. This truth will be made known, and then this will happen. And what did Jesus say in Matthew 24? When this great persecution, this tribulation would come about, what was the effect that Jesus said was going to happen on the believers? When there's this great persecution, there's going to be a big falling away. There's going to be apostasy. It's going to be hard when your life is threatened, but maybe not even your life, but your family or your children. Are you willing to believe and to confess Jesus before men if it means seeing your children killed? And that caused a lot of people to fall away. And if you want more information about that, there is a 4th century historian by the name of Eusebius. I'm not saying everything in there is 100% accurate, but it's probably one of the best histories of that time that you can go back and read some of the atrocities that have happened in this time period. He tries to recount some of the things that happened from that 1st century until his time of the persecutions under the Roman emperors, the Roman governors. It was a brutal time. Jesus prophesied, Daniel prophesied, that there would be this 10th horn, or not the 10th horn, but the one after the 10th horn, that would be boastful. We see the emperors started changing their policy, basically. A lot of times the emperors were deified as a god after they died. Not so after this point. Now they're saying, I'm a living God. You need to worship and bow down to me and treat the emperors as God. Again, that kind of harmonizes with what's being said here, that this man of lawlessness would assert himself as being God himself and put himself above all other so-called gods.
And that's where a lot of Christians got in trouble, because they would not bow down
Yeah,
to the emperor.
right.
You know, and that's, so you're against our government if you don't bow down. You know, in Romans' eyes, you were against our government. You know,
Yeah.
I can't think of what I want to say, but
They're insurrectionists.
they're not for us.
Yeah, and so they're not following the narrative, the line. They're not going along with it. Those atheistic Christians, they don't believe in the God or gods, and they're not doing what we want them to do. And so they started persecuting and killing them. And so what did that cause Christians to have to do? We didn't have any fear this morning of somebody seeing us coming in the parking lot here to assemble. They had to start meeting in secret. They had to go underground. Well, then, you think in terms of a Roman Empire, what are these guys doing? They're meeting in secret? What's going on? You know, their founder was an insurrectionist. He was killed under Pontius Pilate for insurrection. His followers, they must be up to no good. We got to stomp them out and get rid of them. And so you can see how all this suspicion could just further inflame this whole cause. So we're not going to have enough time to finish all this. Let's press on. Verse 8. Then that lawless one will be revealed, whom the Lord will slay with the breath of his mouth and bring to an end by the appearance of his coming. Now this seems to, in some ways, throw a wrench in the whole thing. Because what's going on here, well, number one, this lawless one, he's easy to defeat. The Lord just slays him with a word, and he's gone. Just like in Daniel 7, the judgment was pronounced against him, and he's tossed into the lake of fire, and he's done for. But it says, with the breath of his mouth and bring to an end by the appearance of his coming. Well, wait a minute. I thought this is talking about when the Lord returns, he's going to destroy him. But that boastful horn, which could be representative of multiple people, kings, emperors, they've long since died. How is he going to destroy them at his coming if he hasn't yet come?
That's where it gets tangled up.
It gets kind of tangled up.
It comes in judgment several times throughout his.
Let's put it this way. If someone is evil, does wicked, horrible things, and lives a long, prosperous life, and they die, have they gotten away with it? No. There's still a judgment to come. And the wicked are raised just as well as the righteous are raised on the last day. Their time is coming. And so when we look back at Daniel chapter 7, and we see this vision, which is very surreal. We have these 4 kingdoms, and they're all on this scene all at once. But wait a minute. They're all there all at the same time, but they were sequential. This one, then this one, then this one, then that one. And then at the end, you see the Son of Man coming in the clouds up to the Ancient of Days, and he receives the kingdom. And all this is kind of happening in real time at the exact same moment in time. And even in the dream, Daniel asks, what's going on? And then he looks again, he sees the horn waging war against the saints. But that beast was already thrown into fire, but it kind of goes backward. I mean, you have everything happening all at the same time in this prophecy. But that's not the way it works. But there is a sequence, this, then this, then this, then this. But there's no mention of time. And so we have to remove time and understand that there can be a couple thousand years between this image and that image. So all that to say, in verse 8, when it gets to that point, talking about he will be destroyed at his coming, you can merge those all together and realize that those emperors could have come and died, but they're still yet to be destroyed. They haven't gotten away with it. Think about those things, and if you have questions, send my way. Maybe we'll have time. We've got one more class to kind of wrap up these thoughts and the rest of the chapter, and then we'll move on from there. Thank you for your thoughts and participation.